Greetings. Welcome to Hot Topics from the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Parker Hagan. Tonight's show is Black History. We're talking about then and now, and where do we go from here? You know, so many individuals have no idea of our history and how it came to be where we can go and vote, where we can live in the communities we want, how we can go into any neighborhood, how we can even drink from the water fountain. That's right. There was a time we couldn't drink from whatever water fountain we wanted. We couldn't go into stores or supermarkets and get what we wanted. But I have my co-host with you, Dr. J.
And good evening. Good evening. I'm excited about this. This whole month is Black History Month. And in the beginning, it wasn't a Black History Month. We had a Black History Week. And thank God for, Carter G. Woodson, the founder of Black History. And when we start talking about that, to me, it's a time to take pride. And I think we all realize the fact that truly Black history is 365, every month of the year. Because in fact, until we stop to recognize the tremendous triumphs and the contributions that we as Black people have made, we then undermine ourselves. And that's why it's so important that even from the political landscape to fight and not allow no governor, no legislation to come and water down our history, to try to diminish our history, to try to, if you would, give us a fiction for a history. Because there's been too much sacrifice. There's been too much power that we've overcome so much. And here's the thing about it. We're still overcoming. But beyond overcoming, there's also the fact that we're making inroads. So that's one reason I'm excited about tonight's show. We're talking about Black history then and now. Where do we go from here? Because if we are living this thing the way that we should, we are Black history. We are making Black history. Dr. Val, you're making Black history. You're an author. You've authored 4 or 5 books. There are things that you've done. You've overcome incredible odds. You have a foundation where you've reached out to help women who have gone through not only abuse, but have gone through struggle. That is history. And whether the history is local, whether the history is worldwide, you're making history in somebody's life. And we have to live intentionally and deliberately as if that is the case. So I get excited about it. I ain't hating on no Black folks that's doing anything. I'm going to be the best cheerleader to you because the fact, listen, we didn't always get a chance to hail our accomplishment. And in spite of everything that we went through, one of the biggest things that ever happened, they didn't want us to read. They didn't want us to learn to read and write because they understood. If you ever got to read, if you ever learned how to read and communicate, then all else is a wash.
Absolutely. You know, we have so many women and men who actually helped us to be where we are right now, all the way from, we know her as Harriet Tubman. Her name was actually Amarita Minnie Ross. That was her legal name. And then we call her Moses because of the fact that she led so many men and women to freedom that were slaves after she gained her freedom from being a slave. And before there was a Venus and Serena Williams, there was Althea Gibson. She was the first Black tennis player to play in the women's tennis match. And yeah, she was the first. And, I fell in love with her when I was in elementary school. Our selective reading was one of the main readings that we had to do was with I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We had to read that. And after reading that book, I just fell in love with reading. And when I picked up this book by Althea Gibson, I Always Wanted to Be Somebody is the title. I began to hunger and thirst because I was like, yeah, I want to be somebody too. And she talks in her book about how after school she used to run and play in the park and play tennis. She used to watch people play tennis, and she could only play ping pong. because that was the only thing that they had access to. And it was in this bar, and she would be there playing ping pongs. And I started remembering that's how I started playing handball. I was out
Exactly.
the littlest, tiniest thing in Ozone Park playing handball with the big dogs. They all big. They used to be yelling and saying, Miss Jones, can Valerie come out and play? I'm a little bitty thing. I think I'm about 70 pounds or so back then. And they used to call for me to come play handball, but I fell in love with that by reading the
Wow.
story about Thea Gibson. I always wanted to be somebody. And, it just goes on, even to Kamala Harris being the 49th vice president, but the only female vice
Exactly.
president, and she happens to be African American. So we have come so far, but these young people today have no idea of the legacies that have been laid for us simply to be. And I'm so glad I have, joining us tonight, Dr. Luvenia Allen. She's one of my dearest, closest friends. We just
Yes.
celebrated her 80th birthday, Dr. J. And I know
Wow.
she has
Look at
so
there.
much to share with us. Been 80 years on this planet. She has a lot to share. Dr. Allen, are you there?
I am here and I'm just enjoying both of you. How you doing?
Good evening. It's wonderful having you. All
Oh,
me.
so glad. I'm so glad to be here. I was just speaking with my sister Val about 2 months ago, just prior to my birthday, and I was telling her how upset I was about the condition of our country as of today. And I said, these people, the kids, they just don't understand where we came from. They just don't understand. They don't understand in listening to so many of them speak, they talk about how they don't want to vote. And I couldn't, and I was telling her, I said, it just really upsets me. I said, these kids, they have no idea. I said, I will be 80 years old soon, very soon. I don't like what they're saying about our present president. You know, he's
Yes.
only what 1 year older than I am. And I wanted to share, I says, I can remember I can remember at being 80 years old, I can remember when we didn't have the rights to vote. I can remember, when the kids were integrated into school at Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Little Rock, Arkansas.
For that, I can remember that. I can remember how our people were, the dogs they would put the dogs on our people, how they had the water hose and so forth. I can remember the signs. I'm old enough to remember the signs when you would ride around or you go to a restaurant, you see, for blacks, I can remember
Yes.
Mm.
signs that says white only. I can remember when you couldn't even drink from a water fountain, so I can remember
Exactly.
these things. And now our kids, they're talking about they don't want to vote.
Hmm.
To me, it just sounds insane. I said they have to be insane if they have no idea what our people went through in order for us to be able to vote. And now that they have the right to vote, and they're talking about they're not going to vote, or they're going to vote for someone who has who does not have their interests at heart at all. So I was extremely upset about that.
I can definitely relate to what you're saying, but it also goes back to the fact of why we have to be staunch advocate to make sure that our history is taught.
Absolutely.
When we're dealing with systems and governments who want to whitewash our history and try to pretend that the history in America has been rose-colored glasses, all fuzzy, that is a deception. And so one of the reason our children don't see the value of it, because oftentimes we're not putting it up in their faces. They don't really know what it is. I spent time in the classroom today, and with each one of my workshops, I wrapped it around Black history, in particular when we start talking about voting. I was born and raised in Selma, Alabama, which is the reason, as a result of what happened with Bloody Sunday March, that became part of why we had the Voting
Yes,
Rights Act. And
absolutely.
so that meant a lot to me. But I grew up at a time where, though I may be a little younger, I still remember as a little boy seeing the white only fountain, black only fountain. Uh, my school, I mean, I'm 3 years removed from segregation. And
Mhm.
so for me, I really didn't see a lot of white students until I was in junior high school. And so there's a lot of things that happen. But our young kids, they don't know because we are not. What happened was this: somehow or another, we did not learn how to walk and chew gum at the same time. Though there was barriers being broken, color barriers being broken in sports, color barrier being broken, we celebrated those things, but we failed to make the connection of how did that get to
How did they
be?
get there?
The
Yes,
educational part.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so that's important. Like even with the kids today, when we talk about Black history for them, it's easy. If I was to tell them to name athletes that they thought was famous or hip hop artists and music, they would know it. But when I start talking about, did you know a Black person is responsible for the technology that we use for as WhatsApp, Facebook, and Google? And I'm saying not only the Black person, a Black woman who is still alive, who that I don't know who she is. You start they have no clue because once again, if all our accomplishments are turned toward just entertainment, towards sports, then it limits us. In other words, I can identify with it if I'm athletic. I can identify with it if I'm talented. But let's talk about those kids. Talk about the John Lewis's,
Yes,
Student Nonviolent Association, SNCC. Talk about these were young people
right.
that took this thing by the hand and ran with it. I mean, think about it. Refusing to leave the lunch counter where they would be refused to be served, being spat upon, and all of that took courage. That took
Absolutely.
courage. And
Ab-
that's what we don't
So,
understand.
Dr. Allen, you're a registered nurse by trade. This is what you've given your life helping individuals. So talk about that and what made you want to go into that field.
well, as a young girl growing up, I wanted to be my goal was to be a doctor. I've always wanted to be a surgeon, but as it would be, I end up having children at such an early age until instead of going to be a doctor, a medical doctor, I end up going to school for nursing. So in doing my nursing, I mean, even in doing the nursing, I mean, I've been nursing for so long that I've, been able to take care. I took care of many, many people, but there were so many of them who did not want a Black nurse. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make a difference as to what profession, unless I guess even with the stars, they have hard times too. But I know as a nurse, as a female nurse, white people did not want you to take care of them, and they would tell you that,
Even
even
if they were dying.
even though they were dying. Yes, I
Wow.
something. I'm gonna tell you. Let me tell you. I'm gonna share this with you. I had a patient once. I was working in a hospice facility, and I passed by his room, and I saw that he was having difficulty breathing. I went in to put his oxygen on, and he told me he didn't want me to put it on. So I walked out of the room, and instead of me just walking out and not saying anything, I walked out and I saw the nun, and I told her that he was having difficulty and he needed his oxygen on. And she was upset with me because why would I? She wanted to know, well, why would you walk out here and tell me he's in difficulty instead of just putting it on him? And I told him he refused it from me. So I went back in the room with her, and of course, she told him off. But that was the mentality of the people that that I've taken care of over the years. Not only with the white ones, but the Hispanics as well. I did an assignment in San Antonio, Texas, and I received the same reception. There was no Black nurse.
You know,
Wow.
and
And
you
it's
had the
it's
knowledge.
amazing how racism, you could be a minority and you still racist yourself. It's
Yeah,
just crazy that you would rather just die.
you'd rather die than have a Black person help them. And as of now, besides my nursing, I did a lot of traveling with the Red Cross. I used to do
Yes.
deployments with the Red Cross. Alabama was another state, the only state that I've ever gone to that I said I would never return to help.
Wow.
I went to Alabama, and these people houses destroyed. They are living, we would have them, when we would set up the camps and so forth for the people to come to. the shelters. Do you
Mhm.
believe that they didn't want black nurses in there with them as well? I mean, they're in a shelter now from a storm that has torn up their houses, but they did not want to be bothered with a black individual taking care of them.
Unfortunately, you're right. I recall stories growing up in Alabama. And I didn't realize this until I was grown. But
Hmm.
going back to my hometown, going through the interpretive center, now they're doing this story. And what I did not realize, right at a hospital that I grew up knowing about, nurses, particularly black nurses, could not even wear a white uniform. They had to wear a brown uniform, and they had to enter in through the back door. And so, with those type things happening there, it was a disrespect to their profession. It was a disrespect to their knowledge and all those things such as that. And you know that racists have to be very deep when you are refusing care that you need from an
Absolutely.
individual simply because of the color of their skin.
Well, like I said, I have traveled to many states as traveling with the Red Cross. And Alabama is the only one that I say I would never return to. The only one.
The
And I feel
tragedy
so sorry.
is the state of our country right now. I have not seen the elevation of racism as I have since the prior president was in place. It actually showed us who each person was. And it was so sad and so traumatizing that, here we are, another election. And although we went through all of that these last 4 years, 6 years ago, we went
Yeah.
through all of this, and still people would rather have that chaos, rather go outside and be in fear if they're going to be able to make it back home. They would still rather be walking down the street and having someone assault them than put someone in office that's for the people, not just a certain nationality. It just grieves me that America has shifted so far back as
So
it relates to racism now. It is frightening. I'm afraid for my children and my children's children, because the state of America, we used to be we used to be the country, land of the free and home of the brave. But so many of us have cowered down and gone into hiding because we're afraid of what someone may do to us. We're afraid to let our light shine. And Dr. J, you talked about athletes but there are a lot of people of color that are successful business women, that are successful doctors and nurses and lawyers. We're not just entertainers
Right,
or
exactly.
athletes, and that we've accomplished so much. And we didn't get there, women didn't get there laying on their back. They got there fighting and working for a place. It's it's bad when you're laying there on your deathbed and there's only one person that can give you oxygen and you refusing it.
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. What you said is so important. And going back to what was said earlier about Dr. Allen, she was in the medical field. And when you think about in that time, and for whatever reason, the narrative in this country has always been to downplay who we were and our
But she's
contribution.
still a registered nurse. She up there with the president. She's still working.
Exactly. And still, because I really believe that when you start talking about the healthcare profession, particularly nursing and those things, it is more than just a skill. It is a call. It's a calling that you have to be dedicated to. And so when you start think about the major contribution that was made by Black people, Dr. Charles Drew. When we think about, come on, Dr. Charles Drew,
Mm-hmm.
this man here was
Mm-hmm.
responsible indirectly of saving thousands of lives,
Right.
especially those when they was fighting in the war and they was dying and bleeding out. This was the man who came
Yes.
up with the whole thing about plasma and a way to preserve and a way to do. That wasn't easy.
No.
But everything since that time, when you talk about surgery, has been impacted by what he did. And so we cannot let those things go. We got to talk about people like, if you would, Daniel Hale Williams, Dr. Daniel Hale. Who are these individuals? Our children don't know enough about them. We're not talking about them. We don't talk about the things that are there. We see hospitals and things named after everybody else but us. And we need to highlight those things. You're talking about inside of his contribution to us. I want to just highlight this. Became one of the first physicians to successfully perform open heart surgery. To successfully perform open heart surgery. Incredible. Incredible. And yet it's still, we was made to think that we was ignorant, that we were not capable of doing so. And yet it's still, we've done so much. And you guys talk about women. You think about how a lot of folks saw the movie Hidden Figures, and Taraji P. Henson, all those was in there. And too often they get caught up with the narrative of it's just a movie or fiction. But these women were depicting real women, real Black women who was incredible mathematicians, and so incredible that they affected NASA far as everything from takeoff to landing. It was their savviness, their smartness. They were incredibly brilliant and ahead of their time. And so we have to paint the narrative that, listen here, our women that have been successful, they're not successful because they was on the pole. No, they were not successful because they was on the pole. They're not successful because they had to always lay on their back. But they was brilliant. They was incredibly smart. They was gifted and they was talented. And they made history because they was focused and realized that they could make a difference.
And they still are. And we still are.
Absolutely. And that's really the message for the next generation, is that we still are. And I think that's really part of the thing. We have to look at history for what it is. Both of you just talked about how we saw America take a step back. Let's just call it for what it is.
Way back.
Call it for what it is. What we saw happen in the 2016 election, and from 2016 up until 2020, it was a step back for this country. It's amazing how we came out of a Barack Obama presidency. I'm not saying Barack did everything 100% right, but I tell you something, the morale in this country was a whole different place in terms of things. What we saw there.
When you finish talking about that, Dr. J, I want you to expound further on Congress. And, you could be a president, but when you're held captive by the House, things can't get done. So we want to talk about that next. So want to make sure we maximize the time.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. And so what we saw happen in 2016 was the realization and the acceptance of racism openly, because we had a racist president. It's no other way around it. A racist president, one that absolutely has no morals inside of anything. And we as a country accepted it. We accepted thievery. We accepted it. We're seeing now where this man here is in court now with several charges, just been ordered to pay $355 million for just the fact of the things that he has done, an indictment. And we have the nerve to allow him to still be on a ballot to run for presidency again.
Dr. J, that should have been nipped in the bud.
Absolutely.
January 6th, that should have been nipped.
That was it.
Right then and there, because you know what, he wasn't. They knew January the 6th that he was not eligible to run again. They knew that. So why didn't they start bringing up charges against him then? I mean, why did they wait till now to bring up what is it, the Amendment 14 now to bring that up now? He shouldn't have been allowed. I mean, they should have started processing him January the 6th and no later than the 7th.
But see, this is the state of America right now. This is America. This is America now. Back then, it wouldn't have been like this, and it wouldn't have gone this far, because we, the people, had a voice. We, the people, weren't conflicted. We were focused, one mind, one goal, and that was the ability to speak, the ability to be, the ability to live where we wanted to live, the ability to work the jobs we wanted to work. But now we have put a ceiling on our own lives.
Absolutely.
We've
Absolutely.
done that. We elevate people to positions to put their foot on our necks. We do that.
Courts. Look at our courts now. Look at our Supreme Court. Look at that now. We
It's
have
awful. And people are like, well, I'm not going to vote because it's not going to change anything. But it will change something. Everybody counts. Every vote
every vote,
counts.
everyone, every single one.
They
Now,
have absentee ballots. They put things in place to keep you from voting. So that
Yeah.
ought to tell you just how valuable your vote
your
is.
voter. That's right. Now, Dr. J, you was going to elaborate on the House. Could you
Yeah. Well, yeah,
speak on that, please?
yeah. So once again, when a person is in president, it's the president. The president, we have to understand that's the executive branch of government inside of that. But you have a legislative branch there where now we talk about Congress and those individuals there. And so the president can have all the great ideas in the world that they want, but all these things have to get by the House and have to get by the Senate. And so if the House is the majority of the other party who's going to oppose it, whether it's right or wrong, then guess what? It can stymie what the president wants to do. And oftentimes it forces the president into compromise that they might not normally take. But they're trying to, it's almost like, I'd rather get some of a deal than to not get anything at all. And that's what happened. There are a lot more that President Barack Obama could have gotten done, but he was if you would, he was hand strong by the House that he had, particularly in the second term. We
Yeah.
saw them deny his Supreme Court nominee. They totally, in other words, they said, no, we're not going to bring it to the floor. So we're going to leave that vacant. And that was the type of manipulation. From the moment the man was elected, this is what they said. We're going to make sure that he's a one-term president. And they didn't succeed at that. But what did they do? They went to the next step. They locked him up in his second term so that there are a lot of things that could not be done. And so when people say what I'm voting for, if the 2020 election did not show you that your vote count, then nothing will. Because we were hung up. We had a president for a whole 6-7 months still propagating the lie that the election was stolen. It was stolen. It was stolen. And no matter how many times they counted it, he still came up short. And then to be caught on record trying to get, if you would, the people of Georgia to just make a vote for him, to deny him. That is what I'm saying. And that's why we have to get out and vote, because our vote is our voice. Our vote, if we don't vote, what we're doing is we're co-signing on whatever comes. And we can't afford to do that.
It like I said, it is going to be terrifying, because everything that we know, if that wrong person gets in the house, we will be under a new world order. We will have no rights. It's going to be free willy. It's going to be cowboys and Indians here. You think cities are going to be burnt down. You think you're going to have to wait. Now, listen at this. Racism against one is racism against all. Nobody is going to be an exception to the rule. So those of you that are white that think you won't be going through anything, those of you that are Black, Hispanic, French, Asian, whatever nationality you are at risk of being harmed just by one command. Could you imagine? Do you know how many Asian people were attacked because of one command during the pandemic? Imagine one command says, slaughter all white people.
Yes.
Slaughter all Black people. Slaughter all Hispanic. Can you imagine? Racism against one is racism against us all. We must stand. And if we allow the wrong person to get into office, life as we know it will not be the same, and it will not be for the better. We will all be living in fear.
You know, in 2016, it was an anomaly. because no one thought for the life of them that this individual could be possibly elected, not in what we considered an intelligent America, not in what we considered, come on, this is a joke. We
Right.
were all shocked. I will never forget that night when I saw the whole electoral thing go that way. I was sick. I thought I was in a nightmare. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And so
That,
what we have to understand is that we have a person who's right now talking about what they will do. We have a person right now that is basically telling our enemy to attack members of NATO. We
yes.
have a person right now who wants to be president, who is saying to the Soviet Union to attack those that are part of NATO, the folks that we're in alliance and treaty with. We're
Yes.
talking about a person who have literally said out of their mouth that basically that our blood, anything that's not white, is poisoning America. What does that tell us? When we talk about immigration policy, why is it always from the people, the Hispanic, the black country, never from European countries? Because once again, what is it saying? It's the elevation of racism. And I don't care who knows it. For every one of us who say that in God we trust, and that means black, white, or whoever, our silence give consent. Our silence give consent to the white preacher. If you don't stand up and speak out against this, your silence give consent. You're co-signing with this type of foolishness. This isn't love. We see the minimization. We see, if you would, the condemnation. We see it happening all over this country. We got homelessness out of this world. We got a lot of things that are happening, and we seemingly have grown, if you would, numb to what's happening. And like you said, Dr. Val, the worst is yet to come, specifically if this individual is
If we stand by and elect or allow this individual to be reelected, the worst is yet to come.
You know, and let me make this clear. All of them that are running, I'm not for, but
exactly.
I will vote for the less evil.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I will vote for the less evil, and it doesn't matter what party they are. If I feel that they will be beneficial to a people as a whole, and I'm not going to vote for nobody just because I want my stock to go up. Because let me tell you something, money doesn't matter if you're dead. Money doesn't matter if you can't walk outside your house and get in your car. You know how many carjackings are going on. You know how many cars are being stolen for people walking up and down the street, you know, breaking into people's cars. They have the intelligence where they can just use a remote and open up your car. Do you know that is going to be out of control?
And you
We
couple
need
that
to
with
wake
artificial
up and
intelligence.
see what all is at stake. And then let me say something to you. We got people that are out of work, and I don't know about these kids or whatever that are out there breaking into cars. But let me tell you something. If the wrong person gets in office, they're going to say, shoot to kill. And that could be your little darling.
That's right.
That could be your little darling out there. And you say, well, why you had to shoot him? He was only still in a car. Why it cost him his life? But this is the reality of what we're going to get. Cowboys and Indians. And then when we go to court, we have to justify if it was stand your ground.
You're exactly right. And then it goes back to the fact, how in the world can we sit around and just complain and say they don't need to vote? Here's the thing I'm going to say, and I concur with you. I'm not necessarily talking about voting down party lines or anything else. Quite frankly, I'm very sad to think that the Republican Party could not get anyone else to be able to be their front runner, their candidate, than what we got there. We know what that's about. We've seen what that's about. Mean-spirited buffoonery, being laughed at by the rest of the world inside of those things. So the fact of the matter that you're going to tell me out of all those people there, there was no one else that they felt was qualified enough to provide leadership other than what we had in 45? No. There's a problem there. By the same token, we got problems on the other side. I don't think that we should be age shaming President Joe Biden, but I do think this, that somewhere along the line, we do need to, they have to make a decision. Is he going to be able to continue? Because if, as a nation, because now we have Democrats that are turning on him, that they're saying that if as a nation that we're going to ridicule the man who's in office, then really what is the solution? Who are we then looking to replace him with?
It's sad we have no other option.
Yeah, because it's obvious that perception-wise that our vice president has not been elevated to the point that as a nation people feel that she would be strong enough to lead the country. Because, and oftentimes we see it so much, the vice president role oftentimes seems to be the invisible role. Although they preside over the Senate and those things like that, we have to be very mindful of the times that we're in. So I'd be honest with you, there is a projection, there is a prediction that's been said that before we even get into that season, it's very possible that we will not see either one of these candidates on the ballot, which meaning that we will be all rushing to try to see who's going to be the party's nomination. Could you imagine? I mean, that's a decision that was supposed to come down today, especially particularly as it relates to him being able to be on the ballot in Colorado, whether or not the things that have happened, the decision about January 6th, how that's going to affect things. There's a trial that starts in March. There's a lot of things that are out there.
I saw that this woman in Miami did a GoFundMe and already raised $500,000 to give to him.
To give to who? The other person?
Yep.
Oh,
to help him pay that lawsuit.
Get out of here! I didn't see that. Well, they all.
But this is the mindset of America. We've got to get back to the foundations of what it was all about. Why did we fight? Why did we die? Why are we here?
I don't know. It seems lately that the whole Republican Party has gone nuts. I mean, the whole Republican Party. I mean, it's
Democrats too. It's just not one-sided. Both sides have gone crazy and lost their mind. But like I said, we gotta vote.
We gotta vote. We have no choice. We have no choice but to vote. But even though they said that Biden might not live out his term, and I guess they think that maybe Kamala Harris would not be strong enough. Well, they think that a woman is not strong enough to run the country anyway. And being the black woman, they're certainly saying that she's not strong enough, to run the country. But I just know that she would be better at than the other person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other person is only a couple of years younger. So by the time if he got in office, by the time he get in there, he'll be his age.
Right.
Exactly.
So what are we really talking about here? It's sad. It's sad that so many hands are dirty that we can't have stronger people on both ballots. Because everybody's on there, their hands are dirty in some capacity.
Yes. I agree with you there, Doc. I agree with you there. But when you look at Biden, the main thing that they have against him now is his age. And that is starting to tick a lot of older people off as well, because who's going to vote? Who goes out to vote? When you look at the voting, the old people are the ones that are really getting out there doing the voting, so why would they be so down on Biden because of his age?
Well, that's the whole thing about it, is that who's got the message? Who's got the message that is going to capture the hearts and the mind of the younger generation? We are now in a time now because, we're baby boomers. We're the end of the baby boomers. I know I'm the last year of the baby boomers. And so that was the largest, that was the largest generation born, post war
Mm-hmm.
until the millennials came around. The millennials is spaced to outnumber the baby boomers. But
Yeah.
when we look at the millennials, inside of that, there's a lot of experience that they need, but they've been somewhat still hampered by the old guards.
Yes.
By the old guards. How do we now get them to rise above the same old, and really do the things to bring us together and unite us? Because we're living in a country now that we're divisive just to be divisive. In other words, one party can know that this is the right thing to do, but because that party thought of it first, no, we don't want to go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're seeing that happen. So we got a lot of work to do. We're talking about the millennial generation. We talk about Generation X. And then we'll talk about the fact of what happens now. You got Gen Zs that are coming along.
Mm-hmm.
And all these three major generations, they're our future. They're our present and our future.
The most disturbing thing
Mm-hmm.
is that we have a generation that has no heart or knowledge or wisdom of God.
Exactly.
That's the scariest part, when you leave God out of everything.
Well, that's where we come to in this nation. We've been unraveling like that since the 60s. I can still remember in school, especially elementary school, the first thing in the morning we did, not only did we do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, but we used to have prayer. Then I remember right after the Pledge of Allegiance, we would sing "My Country 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty" of VIC. We're living a day and time.
Honored to be an American.
Right.
Absolutely. I can remember those days.
And so,
but here again, we had people just like that, 45 that just like that wanted to take that out. When one side they say no, in God we trust, on the other side they be, let me pat that behind for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
you gonna we got our Christian community that'll vote because a person is opposed to abortion, but you okay if that person is a rapist,
Yes.
is a molester, is a womanizer. You okay with that?
Something, I think that I don't think that they, even though abortion is like a big, big, big deal, but it needs to be explained more. Women's health is more than just having an abortion. And then that's another thing that it seems as if the Christian community just does not get it. It's women's health. I mean, it's not just having an abortion, it's women's health that they're jeopardizing,
Yeah, see, a lot of churches, especially evangelicals, they talk, okay, if you have an abortion, you're going to hell, you're doomed forever. But yet you're willing to forgive someone that murdered,
Mm-hmm.
that had an accident and killed somebody. You're willing to forgive that. What are we talking about here?
But like I was saying, they need to educate these people more, because it's women's health is more than it's more than just having an abortion. Because you jeopardize a woman's health. I mean, you go to the hospital and you get rid of the baby for more reasons than just not having a child. You have, sometimes the mother's life is at danger as well.
Or they were raped and they don't want to carry their rapist baby.
There's so many reasons why a woman could require an abortion. So many reasons. And that too. But I mean, as for teenagers, I mean, it was on the news a couple of weeks ago where this 12-year-old is being forced to have a baby of her stepfather's. She's 12 years old, and she has to have the baby.
it's interesting to see what happens to the prosecution if there be any, when we of the stepfather. What we have is two things. I think that when we get to the place where the government is making the decision for the individual, that becomes a problem. My bigger problem is the fact that the label that we put on it, we say pro-choice
Mm-hmm.
and pro-life.
Right.
Because you're against abortion doesn't mean that you're pro-life.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't. It just simply means that you're anti-abortionist. Because
Yes.
if you're pro-life, you're concerned about the well-being of that child, the ability to take care of that child. You're
Right.
talking about, that child from the womb to the tomb. You're talking about the fact of the safety of that child, especially black boys and men who are subject to death and brutality. You're concerned about those things. You're concerned about all those things that concerns them. So you can't tell me you're talking about pro-life if the fact that every other thing that you have set up in society is working against this individual to not have a life, to not have a good quality of life. Just call it what it is. You're anti-abortionist, but you're not pro-life. Two different things altogether. Because pro-life talks to not only your quality of life.
Absolutely.
Pro-life talked about the fact of your service in life. Pro-life talk about those things that we do to ensure that we are able to have, if you would, a life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. That's pro-life. Anti-abortion means the fact that we don't believe in abortion, but
Mm-hmm.
don't call it pro-life.
I agree.
This is this is our history where we are here in 2024. You know, we have a Black History Month. How far we've come, like you said, Dr. J. Before it wasn't where it was a Black History Week. Now we have a whole entire month. But what does that mean to us as African Americans? What transitions, what changes are we doing? Are we making to empower ourselves as a people? What knowledge, what wisdom are we passing down to the next generation? Because if we're supposed to be able to lift up and be Black in America, then we need to set some boundaries. We need to lay some foundations, like Dr. King and Harriet Tubman and Althea Gibson, all these fabulous people that imparted into us so that we can be. What are we doing this generation to pass on to the next? This is where we define Black history. And Black history is not limited to 1 month, it's not limited to a day. It's a year long thing, continually, 365 days a year. We need to be empowering and one another with wisdom and knowledge, not talking down. And one of the things that I hate is you calling women bees and stuff. There was a time and using the N word. Now y'all be like, hey, my nigga, what's up? What is that? Because some hip hop artist says it, then it's okay. You want to be identified like that, with so many of our people fought and died so that we could be respected as men and women? What are we doing here?
You know something, that we really have our work cut out for us. I mean, look at the temperature of things now. They're removing the books from the bookshelves and so forth. I mean, there's
Absolutely.
just so much. The temperature for our kids learning now is just so terrible. I mean, we really. I don't know if I don't know. Like you said, where do we go from here in terms of continuing to be able to teach our children our history? Like I
But
say,
the bad part, Dr. Allen,
so many
one of
books.
the bad things, Dr. Allen, is the fact that you have children that are in school and then their parents are young. And when they are saying, we're going to remove these books out of the school, and we're not going to teach Black history, we're not going to talk about Jews, how they were killed and Holocaust and stuff like that. And the only ones that are crying out about it are the older people that know the struggle. The young people that have these kids in school, they not saying nothing. They just going with the flow. It's us that's outside saying, wait a minute.
That was the question that I asked. How do we get this message to our children? Because our young parents are not teaching the kids. And as far as the kids being able to just literally go, and pick up the book themselves, they're removing the books out of the school. I mean, I've seen, many of these different states, the books shelves in the library at school are empty. They're just removing these books off the shelves.
It is because there's a need to paint a rosary picture of America.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be very honest of
Yeah.
America's original sin, which is slavery.
Yes.
When we look at what has happened with America, everything about America has been about raping, taking.
Mm-hmm.
It's been that. And then to discredit, when we start talking about the fact, we don't want to give any credence to the things that have happened. They start attacking this whole thing called critical race theory. I
Right.
need you to understand that it's not a theory. It is truth.
Mm-hmm.
It is an examination of the systemic structure of America that has been set up so that racism, that you are disempowering one at the expense of others. And we have to look at that for what it's worth. The problem is that too often we don't have the same tenacity and the same energy that our four civil rights leaders and those individuals had. Too many of our politicians that are Black, that are running for office, many are running for popularity. They're running to say that I am, but they're not running with the sense of understanding that they're in a position of trust to be able to advocate, to be the voice of the people, because we're supposed to be the government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And so with an absence of that, what we see happening is that there's a hollow sound. That's a hollow sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then when things did not get done, and I want to say this again, we often talked about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who held no public elected office, but did more to change the course of this country than anything. So I go back to this here and say that though we look at the legislation and all those things there, when all else failed, nothing is going to beat the power of unity and coming together with one central idea. And that brings us back to, once again, the church, and particularly the Black church. We have lost our teeth. We don't have the teeth to take on the matter. So what? They want to take the history out of the schools and the history book. We ought to teach it in our church. We ought to do it right there. We ought to educate right there. Oh, that might not get no offering though. But that's where we ought to start. We ought to educate right there, because when we couldn't, we could do it in the church. When we wasn't allowed, we gathered in the church.
What a wonderful idea. That's a brilliant idea.
But it is happening. There is a movement that's already happening. You got a few organizations like Faith in Florida and some other that have already developed the curriculum to teach our history right in our churches. Now, here's the real deal. Will we make the space in our churches for it?
That's it.
So at the end of the day, even pastor have to get out of his ego.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We don't need to hear you every time. Teach our people. Let them know. Pass on to the next generation. The thing I remember most as a child, I didn't quite realize that I was being raised by history makers. I didn't. I'm living in history. Reverend Dr. Frederick Douglass Reach was my junior high school principal. This man is in the history books. This man was responsible for calling Dr. King to come join that march there. Amelia Boynton lived literally around the corner from me. I mean, these are history makers that raised me, that was around me, and I didn't realize they was making history, but I realized they wasn't silent. I realized that they wasn't silent. They stood up, and you respected them because of the fact they had a voice. And the reality is, until our younger generation see us stand up and have a voice, and not see, too many times we give in to our own convenience. We give in to our own luxury. In other words, as long as I'm not disturbed, I got a good job, I got a good house, we're doing good. Oh, it don't seem to be as urgent. It's not as urgent to us. But see, back then, they was willing to risk it all because it was urgent enough to them.
And one of the things you communicated, Dr. J, these were ordinary people.
Yeah.
These were ordinary people that took a stand.
Mm-hmm.
You're listening to us. You're listening to us, and we're talking. We've covered so much territory tonight, but is we're having a conversation, and hopefully you've jumped in the conversation and said, I want to do something. See, everybody can do something.
Yes.
Ordinary people did extraordinary things. They opened their mouth. They had the courage to say, this isn't right.
Right.
This isn't right. And I'm not going to allow you to do it. I'm not going to allow you to treat me like I'm nobody. I'm not going to allow you to put me in a box. I'm not going to allow you to silence me. Ordinary people that refused to be trampled on anymore. This is what our ancestors did for us to be able to vote. This is what they did for us to be able to live in the communities we can live in. This is what they did so that we can have the jobs and positions. We don't want to be maids.
That's right.
We want to own the companies that send out the maids.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to just be chauffeurs. We want to drive our own cars, luxury cars. And it's not always about material things. It's about having the peace of mind that know that you can go in your home, lock the door behind you, go to bed, and be able to have a nice sleep. But if you don't get out and do your part, everybody will be at risk of being harmed. And this is what this is all about here. Bringing knowledge. Knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Read. Stop listening to all these type of music and stuff and say, I want to be like them. Stop trying to live somebody else's reality when we have our own reality to live, because we've got to fight to be here. It's time for us to raise up and take a stand. This is what Black history is all about.
Yeah.
365. And this year, 366. We have to understand, this is a leap year. There's an old saying that said, if it's going to be, it's up to me.
Mm-hmm.
That means that we're not waiting on Superman to come rescue us. We understand that each of us have to take our own personal responsibility. We have to understand this, that it must go beyond just ourselves. We have to think about others, the next generation. We have to understand this, that truly, if we're going to leave an inheritance is what you leave. A legacy is who you leave it to.
Ooh, you better say it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Luvenia Allen. Thank you so much for tuning in with us tonight on Hot Topics from the Soul, Black History Then and Now. And where do we go from here?
Well, I thank you so much for inviting me. I truly enjoyed myself, and it was a pleasure meeting you, Dr. J. And you said something that I will be saying in my church come Sunday. We will
Absolutely.
teach our children from the church.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that program was already in effect. I didn't know that. You
Reach
see,
out to me. There's a meeting. Matter of fact, we'll be putting some information
never
up
too
soon.
old to learn.
Exactly. We're never too old to learn. And guess what?
Absolutely.
You don't have to be just taught doing Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
Our churches are closed too often from Tuesday to until it opens again on Sunday. Mm-hmm. There are things that we can do every day inside of it. Let's educate. And let's educate like we did. We used to have oral history. I learned from my foreparents who taught me. We sat at their feet. They told us stories. They caused us to recognize the importance and value. When we lose value, we lose purpose. The power to define is the power to determine destiny. And we have to do that once again.
Hot Topics from the Soul.
Yeah, this is it. Thank you so much for tuning in to Hot Topics from the Soul. And don't forget to subscribe. And we thank you for participating in the show tonight.
Hot Topics from the Soul. Hot Topics from the Soul.
Dr. J.
Yeah. Hot Topics from the Soul. Reaching all minds, turning knowledge into gold.